Hi everyone, and welcome to another 4D user group meeting. Today is November 18th, 2020, our last meeting of the year. It happens to be meeting number 47 for anyone who's counting. I am just for fun, but since this is our last meeting of the year, happy holidays to everybody. We won't be meeting again until January of 2021, and hopefully it will be a glorious new year. So happy early New Year's to everyone too. Today on the agenda, I'm gonna go through my spiel about 4DMethod. We'll get some 4D news from Jim Sobczak. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the highlights from the 4D blog. And then I'll continue on talking about some of the highlights from the version 18 R5 beta release. Of course, most of the new features are covered in the blog, but it's just hard to cover them all in one sitting. It's just a torrent of new things coming out with these new releases. And then we'll have our special topic demo, quickly open things in 4D development environment, and sync code between projects. Cannon Smith will be presenting for us his first 4DMethod demo. Congratulations. And we'll have some questions and answers, and then talk about our next meeting in January. So my name is Brent Raymond. I organize the 4DMethod user group. Our website is at 4dmethod.com and can be contacted at 4dmethod@gmail.com. What we're trying to do here is just to bring together a scattered community of developers and users. There's people like us out there everywhere, and we have user groups like this to feel like we're neighbors. So we use video conferencing for meetings to develop, to allow people to participate from anywhere. And they're all recorded, and the presentations are recorded and shared on our YouTube channel. And why we do this, other than to have a little Zoom hangout, because I know that's very uncommon in this day and age, but we are really trying to provide just fresh new content and exposure for users and developers everywhere. It's always nice to see what people are working on, what role that 4D is playing in the world, and how people are coding and structuring their applications and the kind of crafty things they're up to. So that is about the user group. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on with 4D. Thanks, Jim, for joining us again.
Hi, Brent. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I like the transition there to my slide. That's a new transition. It's really nice.
We like
it's nice to see everyone. I see some beards getting longer there in the Zoom. So I got the
Edgar,
nice
are you there?
Edgar is there, yeah. And I'd also like to add 4D's best wishes for a safe holiday season. Indeed, this will be a different Thanksgiving for all of us, for sure. One of the things I'm thankful for is the opportunity to participate in these 4DMethod meetings. So thank you, Brent, and Ed, for that. We too are looking forward to Cannon's presentation today. We all know that Cannon's been a vital part of the 4D community for a long time. Very strong advocate of 4D, always positive at 4D events like the Summit and the World Tour. So we're looking forward to see what he's working on. Some updates from 4D. So everyone's staying healthy. Business is proceeding as usual here in the Silicon Valley. If you haven't read about it, most of us are still working from home and feel fortunate that we're set up to do so. Santa Clara County, as of yesterday, moved backwards into Tier 1 in California, which is the most restrictive tier. So we're kind of heading a little bit backwards in our state. Our colleagues in Europe are doing well. Everyone's healthy there as well, and they're taking more restrictive measures there as well. But business is going fine. Q3 sales were very strong, both in the US and at 4D and globally. October and November have been equally as strong, and we're headed for one of our better years, which is surprising in this current economic environment. So For that, we'd like to thank you, our developers, for building your businesses on 4D, continuing to do upgrades, purchasing maintenance, partner renewals, using professional services team. So thank you for that. Speaking of which, our annual Amazon promo is underway now. That's the end of year promo that we do every year, where if you purchase V18 product with maintenance, then you earn certain points, Amazon gift codes, starting at $30, going up to $600, depending on the size of your purchase. It's always been really successful for us. The sales team gets really enthused about doing it, and we get great participation from customers. And November and December are the months where we renew partnerships for everybody. There's several hundred of these every year, so we stay busy doing those, and it's keeping everyone here in the at 4D pretty busy renewing. So you'll be seeing invoices for those either this month or next month. As far as software releases go, I know Brent will be talking a bit about this. In the LTS cycle of version 18, yesterday we released version 18.3 hotfix 2, which is a compatible version for Mac OS Big Sur, as that slide shows there. A beautiful part of the country. If you haven't been to Big Sur, it's absolutely outrageous. But yeah, we were happy to provide extensive support for our customers. As most of you know, hotfixes are typically only available to 4D partners, but we thought this one in particular was so important that we opened it up to everybody who is a registered user of version 18.3. And as far as feature releases go, version 18.4, version 18R4 is the current release of the R cycle. We had a really good turnout for Will and Ad's webinar 2 weeks ago on the feature set in version 18R4. And we're planning to do that for every R release. We'll be having a webinar. It will be Will and Ad answering your questions about that particular R release. And we had to get good attendance, so we're going to keep doing it. And I know Brent will discuss a little bit about the features in R5 beta in one of his slides. We're seeing more and more developers, especially large developers, OEMs, interested in not only developing in R releases, but putting them in production as well, which is great to see. Okay, online training, as we discussed at the Summit Digital Experience, we'll be focusing heavily on training and the Learning Center at the end of this year and into next year. Last month, we launched the first series of 6 online trainings, and we'll continue with those trainings in November and December, and then well into 2021. And then we'll be getting new training sessions in there as we go forward. Getting really good feedback from those training sessions. I know I can see many people in this meeting here have attended some of the trainings. They're limited in size, as you know, so we want to have a robust Q&A after the session is over. So we have to limit the number of users that can attend. So sign up early when they become available. I do have some breaking news today for only these people in the 4DMethod user group meeting. And we will announce it next week, but we will have an advanced training by JPR. As you know, at the 4D Summit, every year JPR does what we used to call a post-class, we now call advanced training, and the attendance is phenomenal. We typically get around 70% of Summit attendees at JPR session. So he's going to be doing a digital advanced training. He's been working on these sessions for months now. I can tell you a little bit about it, but you'll get more information next week. There'll be online sessions. There'll be a total of 6 sessions. Each session will be 90 minutes long. So that'll be 6 days over a 2-week period. We don't know which days they'll be, but it will be a commitment on whoever signs, on the time of whoever signs up for these sessions, because there's going to be 6 days over 2 weeks, which is 90 minutes each. Each session, we're only allowing 15 people in each session, each of the 6 sessions. That's because we want to have Q&A, and the one-on-one stuff works much better with JPR, as you know. But we'll be doing 2 sets of them. So 15 times 2, we'll have a total of 30 seats available for these sessions that'll be starting in December. And then next year we'll repeat them as necessary, but we're going to see what kind of turnout we get for these sessions. Again, you'll be hearing more about it next week with the details of which days we're going to have them, how much it will cost, and exactly how to sign up. But I'm super excited about it. JPR is such a joy to watch present. He really engages people with his anecdotes, his stories, being with 4D as long as he has. And I know he's been working on these trainings for quite a while, so it should be interesting. Finally, I just wanted to thank you all again for moving all your discussions to discuss.4d.com. It's now the place to be as far as talking about 4D, our announcements, 4D announcements, that is, from our engineering team, and better community support for sure, and better support from our engineering and technical support folks. So I know that was a lot, but I think that's all I have today, Brent. Thank you for the time, and looking forward to Cannon's presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. That's pretty wild. So, you know, I know we all generally really look forward to JPR's training sessions at the summits. So yeah, it was a bummer not to be able to have that this year, but so that's six trainings, like would be, they'd all be different each hour and a half segment.
Right. So there, it's a group of trainings, right? It's 6 sessions. So you buy the entire package. Each session is 90 minutes long, right? And it's all, each session is a different topic, of course.
Wow.
So a lot of the stuff that's in V14, ORDA, and the stuff that we've been working on for quite a while, but new stuff too. So yeah.
Right. That's, I mean, that's obviously there's been a lot of new features coming out recently, and, you know, since the past several versions, major versions of 4D, and version 19 will be no different. So probably going to be applicable for a lot of us who intend to try and use the new features, and, you know, what the best practices will be and where 4D is going with its feature set. So very exciting.
Yeah.
It should be noted that JPR has been much more visible on the discussion forums also in the last month, probably in preparation for these trainings.
That's correct. Good point, Ed. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's so. And that will be in this December, and starting in a couple weeks.
Correct. We're going to start them in December. I'm not sure which day in December, but yeah, we're going to start in December, announcing next week. And we're pretty sure they're going to fill up quickly as they do at the summit. So, yeah. That's
cool. Yeah. And that's nice about the R4 webinar. So did that happen right after the R4 was released, or was that something leading up to R4 to say, you know, these are the things that are coming out, and you know, here's what you can do?
No, it was after R4 was released. It was about, I think it was the 4th of December that we had that webinar. So a couple of weeks ago. It's interesting because we have an internal meeting about R4 releases that's presented by our team in France and Morocco to the 4D salespeople all over the world. We thought we should open this up to our customers, right? Because I always found it interesting, and our sales and marketing people did as well. And so we said, great. So Will and Ad were all over that, and they said, yeah, we'll do it. And yeah, I think we had like 75 or 80 people show up for the webinar.
And is that something that's recorded and available after?
It is recorded. I don't think it is recorded. I don't know if it's out there yet. So let me check on that. Okay. Yeah, I know we did record it. I don't know the availability of the recording yet.
Oh, that's, you know,
but I'll check.
Like I said, the new features are coming out so quickly. It's not super to have something like that in order to try and keep up.
Right, and the Q&A session was awesome. Not the presentation was interesting, but the Q&A session was awesome, and Ad and Will answered as many questions as they could, and if they didn't know the answer, then they would, you know, write it down and get back to people.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks, Jim.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. And now on to talk about a little bit about the 4D blog highlights. Now these are just my highlights, things that jumped out at me that I thought would be interesting. There's a lot of a lot of just too much to talk about. Wouldn't want to monopolize the meeting with just talking about the blog, but one of the recent articles was about they're going to be releasing a new 4D compiler, basically a compiler option for the Apple Silicon that's coming out. So you'll be able to say either compile for the Intel or Apple Silicon or both. So that's a a nice note about how they're going to handle the new processors that are going to hit the market very quickly. There's another 4D blog on Type Ahead Made Easy. They introduced a new 4D function, 4D command, I guess, is editing text. And that helps to facilitate when, if you are writing in a language with characters that aren't immediately available on the keyboard, and you use the sort of pop-up that happens for an umlaut, perhaps, or accented characters, that your arrowing to select those characters won't be intercepted by your code. So it will understand, it'll help to make that possible within your application. And so international applications will, I'm sure, really appreciate that that functionality, or anybody who puts a variety of different languages in their app. I know we do that at the museum. With Unicode, it's there's millions of characters that can be put in for translations of texts about ancient artworks and that kind of thing. So pretty cool. There's another one, another new, very welcome command called form edit, which is nice. We've long had the ability to open up a method in the development environment through code, which a lot of people have taken advantage of for introspection and that kind of thing with their in their environments. But now we also can do it with form edit, and so that's a welcome addition. I think if I look back, I had a Hey 4D about form edit several years ago, but nice to see they introduced that. Another blog article about ORDA, share an entity selection between processes. Very nice. It's kind of like having an inter-process set that you can pass around as input to other methods and other processes, or if you just want to have a running selection that's available in storage, so you can have an entity selection that you put in storage, and that's available across all of the processes in the application, and that's also quite handy. I've run into that barrier in the past, and shaken my fist at the shared object implementation until now. But now we also have another article here about, and I find this awesome, automate repetitive tasks and more with form macros. So we've, again, long had macros in the method environment, where you can have create your own selection of actions that even, just from anything from popping in template text into say your comments or whatnot, or even far more complex things like popping up full dialogue windows, or say connecting to Jira and implementing actions like that. I added some useful macros in my 4D Summit presentation, but now we can do the same thing in the form environment, and it's really quite complex, the stuff that you can do. I've just barely scratched the surface with it, and I think that between form edit and the form macros, people are going to be able to make some very interesting stuff, especially now that we have the new project-based applications and forms that can be stored in JSON and whatnot. And it's going to be quite interesting what's possible with the new form macros. So I'm excited to see what you all do with that, and if you do something interesting, let's show it off in a 4D method if you don't mind, because I'd like to see it. And then there's more stuff in R5, which is of course in beta. And a lot of these get covered in the blog as well, but just to fill out what else is in R5. In project mode, you can now see the CSS in the form editor, CSS changes that you make live, which is great. I know a lot of people were asking for that. If I make my red blinky text, I want to see it in the development environment too. And name your parameters and results when declaring functions and methods. I almost just took a component to R5 just for that. Effectively, what it does is, instead of using $1 and $2 for your parameters in your method, you can actually use $, this is what this thing is, and have it be very descriptive. And then as you're coding and using those methods and functions, class functions, elsewhere, the autocomplete in the status bar at the bottom actually shows what those input parameters are. And so it's just going to I can see now I'll be doing a lot of tweaking of code to make that possible, because it's just going to make some of any kind of modules that you use very often, it's going to make them much nicer to work with, because who wants to remember what $1 is all the time? Yeah, so then a lot more stuff going on with 4D for iOS with optimized data synchronization. It looks like I skipped one. Debug code, you can debug server code on the client, which is super cool. The same way that we can now bring up the server status windows on the client, you can now debug directly from the client window, which is very useful for anybody, say, running their server as a service where you can't have dialogues and whatnot. Yeah, great new features for IMAP, search, copy, move, and delete. Awesome. And a constant parade of new stuff for 4D Write Pro and 4D View Pro. So it's again just a whole lot to keep up with. So it's really nice to be able to have that webinar where somebody walks you through it and shows you what each of these things really is about, instead of having somebody just tell you or have to read all of this. It is interesting. I mean, it's wild to see all the great new features coming out. So onward, let's get to the fun stuff here. Today we have Cannon Smith joining us from Alberta, Canada. He's been a 4D developer with Synergy Farm Solutions for many a year. He develops a commercial cattle feedlot application called Fusion, an integrated feedlot management solution. And we'd love to actually see a little bit of Fusion on 4DMethod one day. I'm always interested to see the actual applications, and just walk us through what it's doing, what kind of metrics it's showing for the feedlot. They also make another 4D centric application called Herdly that's integrated with mobile devices. That's for the ranching industry. Cannon's been featured on the 4D blog, mentioned the 4D blog a moment ago, for his Orda cheat sheet. Any of us developers, especially from the old school, for learning a new language, which Orda was for us, it's always nice to have a cheat sheet, a one sheet that says, you know, that lays out all the new commands and little examples and what category they are. So I know I've printed that out and had it on my desk, and it's very useful. And he also did a session for the 4D Summit 2020, the Shelter Summit. It's based on a document-based print engine based on objects and collections. So Canon's been on my short list ever since I started doing these meetings. And so now after 40-something meetings, we finally have him here with us, and hope to have him back again many times to do some demos. So welcome, Canon.
Thank you, Brent. Appreciate that. If I'd known how long your short list was, then
Well, we finally got you here.
let me just share my screen. Oh, I guess I can't yet until you let me.
Yep. You should be able to go now.
Should I do it now?
Yep.
Okay. Excellent. Well, yeah, thanks for this opportunity. Brent said that we could do this, and I was hoping we could keep it informal, and he said that'd be okay. So I just wanted to show you guys a couple of pieces of development related tools that I've created recently. One of them I've used a fair amount. The other one I only created a couple of weeks ago and haven't had a chance to really put it to a lot of testing. But anyway, if it's useful to you, you're welcome to use it. And this is a great place to kind of show you how it works. So can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
We're good? It's big enough? Okay. So I'll start with this one. I call it Quick Open. In Xcode, there's a feature where you can hit, I think it's Command Shift Space, I forget the keystroke, but it brings up a little window. Very similar if you work on a Mac and are used to Spotlight. You're used to the big window that comes up at the big search field that comes up when you hit Command Space, and then you can just start typing. Similar idea, except it's a quick way to get to your code. And I thought for a long time, and others have as well, I think that that'd be interesting to implement something like that in 4D. And we could do that somewhat, but it never felt like a full solution until now in R5. As Brent mentioned earlier, we have the new command form edit, which allows us to automatically open up forms in there in the form editor. And that seemed like a good time to make all this work. So I'll just show you how it works. Actually, I'll explain just one quick caveat first. I wrote this code in V18 dot, what is it, dot 3? I've forgotten now.
Yeah, that's the current version.
Yeah, dot 3, hotfix 1, or I guess we're not hotfix 2. Anyway, I wrote it in that. Obviously, that won't allow you to open up a form, but that's where I'm working all the time. So I still wanted the code there. But right now, today, I'm running in a beta of R5 just so that you can see it fully working even with forms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Option Space, and hopefully you can see that little quick search field at the top of the screen. Option Space is the one that brings this up. And then I can just start typing whatever I want. For example, I could start typing dev quick open, and that's going to very quickly bring up the form and the methods that are in that. Let's start with that.
And it looks nice.
Thank you. So the first one there selected is the form. And so if I just hit return, you can see that there's the form for the form that I was just showing there. You just open that up. So that's the basic idea behind it. I'll just do a couple other examples. I'll hit Option Shift again. Maybe I'll start doing the same thing again. Go down to this begin handler. This is a method. Hit return, and it opens up that very simple method. So I'll just show a few of the features of the window, and then I'll kind of dive into a little bit of how it works if there's parts that might be interesting. So I'll hit it again, Command Space. if I were to start typing in something, if I hit escape, it clears out the search and goes back to just the quick search field itself. And if I hit escape again, then the window disappears completely. Just trying to mirror basically what's happening in Xcode or with Spotlight, which has that same kind of functionality. Now I'll open it up again. Let's see. So again, if I start typing in dev quick open. So at this point, I can use the arrow keys if what I have isn't right at the top and hit return at any point. Of course, it's just a list in there, so I can also use the mouse. I could double click on something. So you got several ways of getting to whatever it is that you want to open up there. You also know that in our, let's see, I've forgotten if it started in R3 or R4, but we could have Markdown documentation associated with each method or each form or some of the other items that are in 4D.
I think it's R4. Yeah.
R4, okay, thanks, Brent.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't available in V18, which is what I'm normally working in, but I still wanted to have that available now for me and then have it in the future. So I'll show you what we can do there. If I hit Option Space again, and let's say I have this developer constants method. Let's say I want the documentation for that. Normally I'd hit return, and I'll just do it. If I hit return, that's going to open up that method, as we saw. If I go back in there, whoops, and I see it's now at the top. If I hold the Option key down when I hit return, instead of opening up the method, whoops, messed up there. Anyway, instead of opening up the method, what it does is it goes and looks for that Markdown documentation that 4D is expecting, and it opens that up. And if it doesn't exist already, it will create it automatically and then open it up for you, so you're ready to go.
That's nice.
Now that wasn't created before. That was so let me just type in some stuff here. Test, test, test. And I'll save that. And I'll just get rid of here. By the way, that was in an app called Typora. You can maybe see that up here, which Tim Neville's showed us at the last 4D method. And I'm sure grateful for that. I've really been enjoying Typora. It's been great for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I've started using that as well. That's the one. Until it's not free, that's the one.
Even I'm happy to pay for that one. It's great. I was really happy with how it allows you to link between subfolders and automatically handles things like adding a picture and copies in the right folder, and it does all kinds of really neat stuff. But anyway, if I come back over to the Explorer here, I'll just usually keep it closed, but if I have it open and that developer constants method, I can select that. And because I'm running in R5 here, I can show the documentation here, and you can see that the documentation's there as just as we just created it.
So the automatic generation of the documentation, that, if it didn't exist, I mean, that's a great opportunity to use a template of your own choosing instead of the standard 4D template that they give you.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. So if I hit Option Space again and just start typing in, whoops, did that again. Now you'll notice that this developer constants, I don't know if you can see it very well, but it has a little clip, what do you call those things? Clip?
Icon? Oh,
Yeah,
paperclip.
Paperclip. I was thinking clip art, and that didn't sound right. Yeah, it has a paperclip there. The idea here is that anything that has some Markdown documentation existing already will show this paperclip beside it, so you know if it already exists, right? So whether that matters or not, at least you'll know ahead of time. And again, if I hit option return, this time it doesn't create it, it just simply opens it, but it's there. Again, because, I mean, in R5, I can show it in the Explorer like we showed it, but I'm actually using this in V18 already. And the 4D itself doesn't know about it, but because I'm just working with a file system, I can put it in the places, the Markdown documents in the places where 4D is going to expect it once I upgrade, fully. And then all my documentation's there already. So if you want to get into the Markdown documentation now, but you're not ready to get to, I think Brent said R3 or further, there's no reason you can't if you want to just work with the file system. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that I really appreciate with the structure of that search window is it also shows you which folder that particular method or form is in. For anybody who takes advantage of the folders in the Explorer, it also shows that on the right column over there.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what we have here is this first column tells you whether or not the item has documentation. The second column tells you the name of the form or the method or the trigger or whatever it is. The third one tells you, are we looking at a form or a method, or what else do we have? There's a few other things that can be in there. I guess I should tell you officially, this thing works with, I wrote down a list here, where was it? Forms, methods, classes, database methods, and triggers. So those are the ones it works with. And again, I'm working in V18 where classes aren't available, but it's all the programming is there so that, now that once I moved our whatever classes came in, again, I can't remember, 3, 4, 5. Once I get there, then all of this code just continues to work and it just allows you to see the classes as well. So, and then as Brent was mentioning, the right-hand column is telling me what folder in the Explorer that method is in. And we were actually talking offline before we started recording. Both of us have had the same experience, and I'm sure many of you have if you're using the folder system, where you create a method in the wrong folder. There's several ways to do that accidentally if you're not being really careful, or maybe you try and drag a method a little bit and something happens and then it ends up in an odd folder. And you don't know where it is, and how do you find it without looking through 150 folders and subfolders, several pieces deep, and it was always tricky. But now with this, all I have to do is start typing the method name, and once I see it, I know what folder it's in, and it's pretty quick to get. So
yeah, that's awesome. You could even put in the folder path, and probably nobody goes more than 2 folders deep, but it's always great information. I was just mentioning to Cannon beforehand that it'd be nice if the folder path was in the method properties window or somewhere in the method edit window. But at least we have it here in this quick find, which is awesome. I mean, I'm a dedicated Spotlight user, so this is right up my alley.
So a couple of the things it can do. If you want a little more functionality, you can always right click on something that you find in there, and that opens up some more options here. The first one is just simply to open it, which is the same as hitting Option Return, just repeated here, hitting just return. The next one, create documentation for whatever it is, and that's the equivalent to hitting Option Return on that item. Maybe you want to actually see that thing on the disk. So for example, if I just tap that now, it's going to actually open the Finder and show me right on the Finder where that method is, or the form, or the trigger, or whatever it is. Let's open this up again.
That's a nice feature too, because I don't believe that that menu option is available from within the Explorer, like show on disk.
I don't remember if it is or not.
No.
It's handy sometimes when you want to get at something a little deeper down.
Yeah.
The fourth option is to show that thing's Markdown documentation, if it exists. This one's grayed out because it doesn't exist, but if it was, it would just go to there. And then we come into this idea of dev docs. So let me explain what that is first, and then I'll show you how I'm using it. I don't know if you guys are like me, but I find that there's a certain amount of documentation that makes sense to associate with a method or a class or a form or something like that, which is why what 4D is doing right now with the Markdown documentation is really exciting. We can have really nice looking documentation associated with these things. But there's also a different class of documentation that's kind of higher level. It's like for the whole project or a whole feature or something like that. And it doesn't necessarily belong with some specific code somewhere. And I think there's lots of ways of doing this. I've in the past used text documents or like a OneNote or I don't know, different applications to keep that kind of documentation there. But I thought it'd be really nice to have that actually in Markdown files as part of the project so that it gets taken care of with version control, etc. And so if I just come out to the Finder and I'll just go in and look at this actual project. So when I'm looking at the project, Fusion Dev is our project here. You can see this documentation folder. This is the one that 4D creates or that I manipulate with this code that I'm showing you. And of course, you can see methods. There's a couple of methods in there, markdown documents for the methods that we just created. But at the same level, I've created this other thing called dev docs for development documentation, I guess. I just tried to create a name that Fusion or 4D probably wasn't going to use in the future, so it was a safe folder to put in there. And the idea here is that anything in here can have markdown documents, images that are linked to them, whatever you want, any kind of structure of any kind of hierarchy that you want. I haven't got a chance to start using it a ton yet, so I just have an example little index file. You can imagine other ones. I've got a tables folder with one thing in there, just as an example. So just keep that in mind. And so I'm going to come back to 4D and hit Option Space. And if I just type in index, for example, you'll see that it comes up with that index markdown document with, and it's showing that it's a dev doc, a little different than the other things. So if I hit return, it's going to open that up in the markdown documentation. And one thing I really love about Typora, because I've opened the top level one, it's actually showing the folder and the folder structure, and I can move around in it. You can see I've got a link there back to the contact entity documentation. If I right click on it and open link, it takes me right to that one. All kinds of things you can do there. So the idea is that, you know, that gives us a chance to have a different type of documentation, but it's built right into this quick open system. So just go a little bit further here. So all the dev docs, if, by the way, when you're searching, it'll search the name, but it also searches the type, and it searches for the folder name as well. And I'll explain more about that in just a minute. So that takes us back to this right-clicking thing. There's some dev doc related options. I can create a new dev doc at the top level anytime I want. That's just going to ask for a file name and create it. I can ask it to create a dev doc beside wherever I'm at. So I've selected something in that second level in the Finder. So if I choose that one, and oh, I just saw a bug. That was not working that way in V18, but it is in R5. It's supposed to be asking for a name. Let me see if I can type in a name and we'll see what happens. I'll just do test and then ask create. All right, so remember I had that contact entity markdown document selected. So it was at the second level inside DevDocs. And so I typed in test and it created this new DevDoc right beside it. So
oh, that's cool.
hopefully that makes some kind of sense there. So yeah, so you can handle, basically handles your regular items like, you know, methods and forms and classes. It handles the documentation for those things. And it handles the idea of sort of a generalized documentation that can be part of your version control at the same time.
Can you also find stuff in the resources folder?
No, but that brings me up to a really good point. It wouldn't take much to either add more items to this, right? Like you just add more things you can do, or you know, as it's parsing things, you can always add more things that it's looking for too.
That's awesome.
So I mean, theoretically, if you wanted, you could get fancy and have it search for things within methods. You could do regex how you say that, searching. You could create your own index in the background if you wanted. All stuff that I didn't have time to do this week for sure, but those are, and you could imagine doing, Brent, you mentioned templates. You could very easily have it so that this allows you to create a new method, a new form, or the documentation for those things, or a class, and just sort of have a template that automatically throws in whatever you want as it's created. So you can do that kind of thing too.
That's awesome.
So that's the basic functionality. I'll spend just a few minutes talking about some of the stuff that's under the hood if you want, and then I can go on to the other one, or maybe there's questions already. I'm not sure where we're at.
Sounds like you could have some suggestions for Spotlight features for Apple.
I'm sure they'd listen.
Yeah, that's what they love those, I think.
Okay, so I'll talk about a few of the under the hood type things. If you do want to get this code, it's just on GitHub. I think, Brent, you're going to share.
I'll ask a question.
Okay, Tim.
When so you bring up the window with option space.
Option space, yep.
Is it a pop-up window where you just click anywhere off the window and it goes away?
It
Or you
is.
have to press escape to make it go away.
No, it's one. So I've just brought it up, and if I just click over somewhere else, it's gone. So yeah, that was part of the idea for sure. Good question.
I built something similar to this, Command Option K, where you could type and it would, bring up a list of methods that, begin with that name. But this is much more robust and got a lot better capabilities and features. So I'm going to switch from mine to yours, Cannon. It's better.
And then start reporting bugs like I just found now.
Yeah.
By the way, I haven't even tried running this on Windows yet. This is just too new. I haven't even tried some of that stuff. So your mileage may vary on a few things, but hopefully it'll work for you. Yeah, so a couple of things. I mentioned that when you're searching for something, it does search all three columns, but it does do some relevance sorting in the background. And what it's trying to do is it, of course, gives the highest relevance rating to if you're matching something in the item name itself. Doesn't matter how you type it. Like if I typed in audit, even though audit's in the middle of job audit trail on the first line, it still brings it up. So it gives the first amount of highest precedence to that, gives the second highest precedence to, I think the folder name is next. I forget which order I go in the other columns, but you can get those. And it also tries to do something that I think might be fancy, but I haven't tried it enough to see if it really works really well, to be honest. But it's trying to do things like when I type in audit, you'll notice that here the first line that came up was job audit trail. And then the second one was truck audit, whatever. And then we went down from there. The reason this one came up first is because the word or the letters audit are closer to the beginning of the string than they are in the other ones. And so the idea here was that as you type, hopefully the thing you're looking for is the first thing that's listed as much as possible. So you just have to hit return. Again, how this will work long-term in practice, I don't know, but that's kind of how that works. How am I doing that? I believe that is in, that's in this on search. So I'm using a collection-based list box in the background there. And I'm keeping the master list of items in this form.master list. And so if there's something to query, it's basically querying name or folder or type based on a contains type search. And that brings back this filtered list. And then with the filtered list, I actually run through on each keystroke every single item. We'll see what it's like with a big project. The project I'm working in right now that I'm showing you guys has over 400,000 lines of code and over 13,000 methods. So I'm sure there's lots bigger ones out there, but it's not small either. And it seems to be working fairly well. Anyway, so I just go through each one of those And I basically do a kind of a weird ranking where, I kind of look at the position, if within the item name or the folder name or the type, like method, folder, whatever name. I just look for the position of that string. So that's going to return a number. And then I do a little kind of funny math where if it's within the name, I rank it starting at 1,000 minus wherever that position is. So the further out, the less it is. And same with folders. And when I'm done, I come up with a rank for each one and simply do an order by on that. And so that's how that's working.
That's nice.
So
Yeah.
technically, if you wanted to rank forms higher than methods, you could just adjust that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's where you do it, is in that method, and do whatever you want. And I think that's probably a place for experimentation. I haven't used it enough to know what works best, but that's how that works. Another thing that's happening, I'm going to hit Option Space. Watch closely. I don't know if you'll be able to see quickly enough, but in the right side of the search field, you might see a yellow dot for a minute. Did you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I want to tell you what's going on there. When you have a really small project, when you hit Option Space, what's happening actually is it's going out into the background and it's searching the whole file system. It's not using the 4D internal introspection commands. It's doing it right on the file system, partly because I want to be forward compatible even when I'm back there in a previous release, and partly just so it's consistent across everything. So it has to look through a lot of stuff. And in a small project, it's not a big deal. It takes, maybe 50 or 100 milliseconds. By the time you start typing, it's good. In a larger project, it may take half a second, maybe even a full second. Because remember, we're running in interpreted mode here. That's kind of the whole idea, right? So what I decided to do, just for fun, was as soon as you hit Option Space to invoke the window, the first thing that happens is a worker gets fired off. And that's this worker right here. And there's a few things it does. I won't go into the crazy details. But the main thing it does is it fires this method, which goes through, and this is the method that does all of the stuff, scans the file system, checks for documentation, basically it's building that collection in the background. And then when it's done, it puts that collection in a shared, in storage, and it fires off a message back to the window saying, hey, I'm finished.
That's nice.
In the meantime, what happens is when the window opens, so right now I open that window, it's already willing to work with the last collection that was created last time that window was open, which is probably going to be fine. Most of the time, we're not adding a bunch of methods all at once or whatever, right, or changing. So it's already willing to work with that. And even if it took like 10 seconds to scan the file system, you could start typing and it's going to find the things that you want using that collection. As soon as the worker's done with the updated information, it lets the window know about that. And all the window does is it just swaps in what's in storage for that shared collection with the sort of master list that I showed you before and reruns the search. So it just looks like that whole bit of information got swapped out underneath without losing anything you've typed or where you're at or anything like that. So
that's crafty.
That was kind of an interesting way of doing it. I didn't know if I needed to do that at the beginning, but now that I'm doing it with a bigger project, I'm glad I did it that way. It's been helpful. So anyway, that yellow dot that you saw, as long as that yellow dot's there, it means you're working with, theoretically old information from the previous search. And as soon as the yellow dot goes away, then you know that that new one is swapped in. So
that's nice usage of the workers and call form. I imagine that's how you're doing it. You call the form to say, get it new results from the storage.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's cool.
Open that back up. It's just right down here at the bottom. Yeah, call form.
Yeah.
I've got the window ref stored in that storage and then telling it to update. So
nice. That's cool.
A couple other things that might be interesting. The event handler. Let's look at that. This was a bit interesting. I haven't used event handlers a lot before. I think only twice before. I was expecting for the event handler to be looking for code that looked a little bit like this up here. You know, if the modifiers, if the option key bit is set to true, excuse me, and if the key code is a space, then you know, invoke basically. That didn't work, and I actually have no idea why. With some experimenting, I found that if I just say if key code equals 202, then that's option space. So for future reference, if you want to use this code and if you don't like option space, you want to change it to something else, or possibly if key code equals 202 doesn't match to alt space on Windows, like you might be expecting, because again, I haven't tested that yet. This is the place where you have to experiment and see what it's supposed to be. What I have in my environment is in the on startup method, I just check to see if I'm running in interpreted mode. And if I am, I just call this begin dev quick open begin handler. And so the handler is running the whole time I'm programming. You might have another way you can invoke this begin handler. There's an end handler method to end it at any time you want. In fact, when the window opens up, it actually stops the handler temporarily, so you can't invoke it twice, right? And then it restarts it again after. But there's a few ways to kind of inject this into your environment if you wanted to use this code. The only other thing I'll mention on that might be interesting, unless you have questions, is you see I got a magnifying glass there, and then you saw the paper clip that was there. I wanted this to be as lightweight as possible to put in other places, other people's code. And so what I'm using there is just Unicode characters. So as far as 4D is concerned, it's just another string. It's not actually a picture of anything. So it's not the prettiest magnifying glass in the world, but it's cheap and lightweight, so easy to transfer. I think that's it for that one, unless someone has questions. If not, I'll go on to the other one.
I can honestly say I've never made an event handler like that. So that's something, definitely learned something new there. That's cool. That seems immediately useful.
You know, if people aren't familiar with event handlers in 4D, basically what they're doing is, as long as 4D is the frontmost application, it's just every time a keystroke or a mouse movement or a mouse click or anything happens, this little bit of code, this is the event handler here, this little bit of code runs. So you don't want to use them more than you have to, and you don't want to have a lot of code in there. In fact, I'd try to just keep it to this one if statement, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are some, at least with Mac OS, and I wouldn't be surprised if the same is true with Windows, there are some keystroke combinations that the system's going to grab no matter what. Command space is actually one of them for Spotlight. You could program command space into here, but 4D will never get it. So there are a few of those, but yeah, that's how an event handler works. Once it's invoked, then this bit of code just runs every single time you do anything. So.
Cannon, I just went and checked my quick method opener, and if you decide to put this into a component, you have to take special care because the component can't have the event handler, and the key code process variable and the modifiers process variable, the component has its own set and it never gets it. So if you want to put this lookup into a component, you have to have a event handler method defined in the host and share it. And then when you start up the event handler, you start that up in the host, and then the component can use that. So that's a small thing I ran into, was when I made it a component, it wouldn't work anymore because the event handler, it only lives in the host, and that key code process variable and modifiers process variable is only set in the host, not in the component.
Yeah, that's good to know, Tim. Thanks. Just one more reason why I stay away from components all the time.
Yeah, there's they're good in some ways, but they sure do chew up a lot of your time figuring out how to make them work. And you can use the modifiers, but you have to use like you have to use command key mask or option key mask, and don't use the question mark.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. I did have this working as it's shown in the comments there. That's actually straight out of the documentation for 4D. I had it working with option other things, but I just couldn't get option space.
Yeah.
So good to know. Maybe I should have tried the mask instead.
I did the same thing too. Anyway, there is a way you can make modifiers work, but modifiers equals and then command key mask or option key mask or some combination. That finally worked for me because I tried the question mark, bit checking, and that I couldn't get that to work.
That sounds good. If you do want to put it in your own code, you can see I've got a folder over here. It's a form and then just these methods here. That's what's available on GitHub. And if you do, there is one method. Which one was it? Oh yes, this is in the comments, but this event handler method. No, sorry, not the event handler. Handle selected. This is the code that runs when you want to open up a method or form or documentation. It's just a big case statement. So if the type is a form, right now, because I'm running an R5, I can use the form edit command. But the code that's up on GitHub actually will have this commented out, and this will be commented or not commented. It's just an alert that'll happen, let you know what's going on. So if you're running R5 or higher, then just make that change in the code. And if not, then leave it as is. You just can't open forms. So any other questions or thoughts on that before I move to DevSync? Good. Okay. That was easy. So this other piece of code that is up on GitHub and you're welcome to use, it's been there for a while now, is something that maybe is more of a niche type thing. It's definitely been extremely helpful for me. Whether or not it's helpful for you, I guess depends on the way you work. So let me explain a little bit. So I've got a project open here. This is one of my main applications. We call it Fusion. So this is the feedlot software. And I've got a few folders here. And over the years, I've kind of standardized some code that I use in several different projects. So I've got a foundation, I've got a developer, I've got a common, and I've got an application. And then I've got a hooks one as well. But the important thing is that these three right here, common, developer, and foundation, are shared across all my projects. And the idea is I want to keep them exactly the same. If I make a change, this would be basically what a lot of people would use components for, but for lots of reasons, components just don't work for me. I want the code to be at the native level, basically, in my project. And so I have it like this. But when I make a change, it's really easy. I'm in the middle of doing some feature, and then I realize I need to make a change. Maybe I add a new method to something in Foundation, for example. Maybe I do something there. I've got a little bit of date stuff, right? So maybe I think, oh, if I had this new date method, it would be really helpful in this situation. So I create the date method, and then I go on with life, completely forgetting that I have all of those other projects that are now don't have that date method. And maybe 6 months down the road, sometime I get to the point where I have no idea which project has the correct things. I might go to another project and say, oh, I need to create a date method, and I'll create another date method. And now I have two different projects which have two different date methods that aren't in either one of the other projects. So if you're in that situation, then this code can probably help. The way I used to do it in binary mode was I would just, once I made some changes, I would keep track of which folders I had made changes in. So maybe it was a states folder. And then I would go and open up another structure at the end of the day, for example. I bring its Explorer window right here. Then I would delete the dates folder, and then I would drag and drop the dates folder from the other one into the next one, have it there, quit, open up the next structure, and do that 7 or 8 times, which was kind of a hassle. It took time, but that was how it worked. When you're working in project mode, the ability to drag and drop folders between 2 different projects no longer exists. And so doing that isn't possible. So you think, well, that's no problem, because if I just look on the Finder, let me just open up this one again. Oops. So here's my project, and if I go into the project, into the sources, well, all I need to do is look for that dates folder, and I should be able to copy that dates folder and all of the stuff it has inside of it, methods and forms and classes and all kinds of stuff, into my other project. But if you've taken time to do much with project mode, you know that that's not actually that works. If you look at methods folder, that's just a list of all, what was it, 20 or 30 or whatever thousand methods I have, just all over the place. And same with the forms, you know, I just got a list of forms. I don't know which ones are in which folder. And it gets a little bit tricky and finicky to start copying and at a Finder level, moving those things around. It can be done though, you know, you just have to find those methods and then copy it around. But what will happen is, let's say I created a new date method here, and then I found it in here, and then I copied that over to another project. In the other project, what's going to happen is when you open up the Explorer, that date method is going to be at the top level. It's not going to be in the folder you want it to be in. And the only way to do that is to manipulate this folders.json file. I'll just open that up real quick if you haven't seen it. This is how 4D keeps track of what things are in each folder in the Home Explorer. And it's just a big JSON file with all the information you need to know where everything goes. And so because I was doing this a lot, it was getting tedious. And so once I got to project mode, I realized, okay, I can do all this stuff myself at the file level. So let me show you how it works. I have a little utilities method that I can invoke this thing in. It's called, I call it sync foundation code across projects, because I can't think of shorter names very easily, apparently. This is the window that is shown. So there's a few things going on here. On the left-hand side, we have a list of all of the folders that are in the project. And I can search for those. So I could search for date, for example. That was the one we were just looking at. You know, or dates, actually. I have a date and a dates because, yeah, long story. I won't explain why. But anyway, there's that dates folder. And so if I wanted to use it, I could just drag it over into the sync folders area. And this is the last one I did. I'm going to just get rid of that one. You can sync as many folders as you want at a time. And so this is showing what's going to sync. And then on the right-hand side, I have a list of my projects. So if you have this code inside a project, the first time you open up the window, this DevSync window, if your project, based on the path to the project, isn't already known about by the DevSync system, then it's going to automatically add it as a potential target. You can also manually add it as a potential target by hitting that plus button and then going and finding a 4D project file and adding it manually. And so this, you can see here that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Don't count these two. I have 7 projects that I use most of the time when I'm syncing things back and forth. And of course, there's actually an 8th one. The 8th one is the project I'm currently in. And it's not showing that because it wouldn't make sense to try and sync with itself. If I open up the same window in a different project, it would show this one and not the project I had opened up. And the way it remembers all of that stuff is it stores, there's just one file that's used by the entire DevSync system, no matter what project you have. It's stored in your user preferences on your computer somewhere. And it just keeps track of which projects belong to, or which projects were targeted by which other projects and all that kind of stuff. So that's the setup. Now, let me show you a demo of how it works, and then I'll get into a few details. To do the demo, As we were preparing this, I actually made a few changes to the dev quick open code because I wanted to prepare it for R5. So remember I told you that the code I'm usually running in the handle selected has form edit and cancel commented out. And this one is uncommented. But because I'm running R5, I wanted to show you how that works. So that was a change I made. So because I made that there, I want to make, in theory, I want to get that to all my other projects. So how do I do that? Well, I just go start typing in developer and I find quick open and I add it to my sync folders. And then I have a bunch of projects there. And so I got 7 of them selected. I could change my targets. It doesn't really matter. And then I would sync. Now, before I do it, I want to show what's going on. So I'm going to just choose one of these. I'll choose the base project. Let me switch over to, I use Tower for working with the Git related stuff with 4D. Really like it. I'm just going to open up a new window and find, here's my base project. So I have base, looks like, oh, I already have something there. I added it. Oh yeah, I haven't. Okay, let me stage this so you don't see it. Commit it. Okay, so you can see I'm now working with an empty working directory. It's clean, nothing's going on. So now if I go back here and if I hit sync, it's going to give me a scary message to make sure I know what I'm doing. I'm going to say yes, sync targets. They're that fast. It did all the things it needed to do. And if I go back here, you can see that for my base project, it updated this dev quick open worker method because I actually made a couple changes in there just before this presentation. And this method, and you can go in and you can see, I would have to go down here. Looks like some spacing changed, but there it is, the form edit. That changed as well. And importantly, the folders.json file also changed because of any updates that needed to happen there. So I'll just come back here. So that change would have happened in all of those projects at the same time. I wondered how fast this might be. You can see, for example, the foundation folder. There's a lot of stuff in here. I mean, it's just really the foundation of everything. There's thousands of methods in there. And if I want, I can select the foundation folder and ask it to sync to all 7 projects. And it will do it in like 2 seconds. It's just very, very fast.
So you're using like file commands locally. You were just using Tower to display the changes that were made when compared against the current repository, right?
That's right. Yeah, I'm not actually committing anything or anything like that. It's on a Git level. I was just using Tower to prove that that sync could actually, sent those changes across. So
cool.
Yeah, it works very well that way. So a couple of things about it. One thing you'll notice if I go back to dates, I have a dates and I have a dates private inside there with a few things. One thing you want to be careful of is you wouldn't want to put both the dates and the dates private folder in there. And if I try to sync, it'll actually warn me and say that. You always want to put the highest folder that you want to sync, and it'll automatically sync all of the subfolders. But if you try and put them both in, in theory, it would get confused, so it doesn't let you do that. So keep that in mind. Sometimes you just want to go right up and do like a really high level folder, and that's fine. Even if you only change one thing, it doesn't matter. It's not going to waste any, it only takes a second or two anyway, and it's only going to make that one change. It will handle things like if I moved one of these methods from this folder to some other folder, as long as I sync both those folders, then the folder structure in 4D in the other project is maintained as well. There is a bug in 4D right now, at least the last I heard it wasn't fixed yet, which basically you just have to make sure that the projects you're syncing to aren't currently running with another copy of 4D. If they do, then the folder structure can get a little bit confused on what's going on, because I think we're fighting for who's in control of that folder's JSON file for a little bit of time there. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But as long as your project's quit, 4D's quit, it won't be a problem. It'll work 100% of the time. So, what else? I think that's kind of high level stuff. I can show bits of how it works if anyone's interested, but it's kind of a niche thing. So I'll leave it to questions to go from there, Brent.
Are you, to detect the changes, so you're not just copying over every single file, are you comparing modification dates on the files?
That's an interesting question. I actually am just copying everything over.
Oh, okay.
But because we're working with Git, and the way Git works, it doesn't care about timestamps for changes. It only cares about whether the content of the file changed or not. Okay. And so even though all those files literally got copied over in that, 20 milliseconds or whatever, as far as Git's concerned, and same with 4D, as far as it's concerned, only that one method changed. So, or the two methods.
Cool.
Cannon?
Yeah.
V18R5 has got a new command called reload project. Have you read about that?
I have, yes.
I'm wondering if maybe that could be used. So if you have another project open, another copy of 4D, you could make these file system changes and then issue a reload project in that other database, and it would update itself.
Right. Tim, that might work. My suspicion is what's happening based on the testing I did. It looks to me like 4D is caching that folders.json file. And there's something that happens when you switch over there that it might be making a change in that folders.json cache, and you've already made a change on the file system, and then it's saving over top of the change you made before it reloads itself. Like there's just a little timing issue in there. I reported it, and they did say yes, it's a bug, and they know what they need to do to fix it. So it's just a matter of timing.
So the problem is the home tab in the Explorer doesn't get updated properly. The files are all there, they just don't get updated properly, so your folder structure is not maintained.
Right. I don't remember the exact details, but I think it was something like you'd end up having a method listed twice, once in a folder and once at the top level, or just weird things like that.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions, or?
We should add, perhaps consider adding these repositories to the open source project. I know it would be fun to componentize either one of them or both, and make them easy to share through the open source project as well.
I don't know how it works, Brent. Like I've got them here in my GitHub account. Here's the dev quick open, and how do I get to the other ones here? Oh, they're both at the top there. Is there a way of kind of linking from the open source area that you're talking about, or what? I'm happy to do that if there's a way of linking it across.
Yeah, Guy or Kirk or anybody who I know is spearheading that might have some ideas for that.
In any case, you're certainly welcome to use it, and if you find bugs or mistakes, please let me know. I'll do the best I can to fix them. So,
well, they're both terrifically useful sets of code there. Yeah. So, any other questions? No. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Cannon. That was awesome. I mean, it's really some best practices in there in your coding that I think everybody could. It might just be interesting for people to peruse the code, let alone use it for themselves. I noticed you were using the new file classes from 4D, which I've fallen in love with myself, instead of like the older file commands.
Brent, I actually just forgot one thing I should mention about that syncing code.
Okay.
I didn't really explain what it syncs. I think it will sync, of course, methods and forms, and it won't sync things like triggers because they're not really in a folder, and it won't sync tables because tables aren't actually on the file system their own thing anyway, right? They're just part of the whole, so it doesn't make sense to do that. But it'll do methods and forms, classes, and it also does the documentation for methods, forms, and classes if there's any markdown documentation associated with it. So it tries to take all that stuff across if it's there. So
that's nice. Yeah. No, that's cool. I mean, both of these implementations are project mode only, right?
yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Which is, I think, becoming more and more the way of things. It's good to make nice with projects, project style.
Yeah, and project mode is wonderful. There's a few rough edges still, but if you haven't used it yet, and if you have a chance to go to it, being able to use Git along with your projects is, for me, been a game changer. I just really welcome it. So can't recommend it enough.
And if there's anything, if you have any components or anything that can be componentized, that can be a shortcut to starting with projects as well. I started doing a little bit of that recently myself, and it was nice. I dig the projects.
Cannon, can I ask a quick question? Is your shell also require project mode, or is that available and open in normal 4D development?
Oh, mute.
He's muted.
Sorry, I thought I was unmuted. I was hitting the wrong button here. Yeah, sorry. Are you asking if the foundation code that I have is available on GitHub to everyone as well, publicly?
Yeah, but also if it requires you to work in project mode, or you can use it just in normal 4D development.
Oh, gotcha. Well, it was all created in binary mode to start with. And there was a summit presentation I did, I think it was 2018, where it was easier for me to just share all of that code than try and separate it out. So if anyone has access to that, they have access to all of that code other than the changes I've made since then. But now I've converted everything to project mode. I don't think there's really anything in it that requires project mode. That's just where I'm at. I don't have anything left in binary mode anymore. So
okay.
All projects.
Cool.
I haven't had time to even look into it yet, so that's why I'm asking.
How, and I know this is another topic, but how was your experience transitioning to project mode?
It was much better than I had thought it was going to be, actually. I was worried that, we know that 4D's taken that opportunity to basically clean up a lot of their code. There's a lot of things they don't know. They no longer have to support some legacy settings and options and preferences and things. And I'm glad they did that, but I knew that was ripe for some problems if I was pushing the system in places. And there's lots of places, especially in the UI, where I do that.
Yeah.
So I was worried that it was going to be trouble. But honestly, there was a few bugs. There's some few things I had to work out. Some of them were a little bit hard to discover, but overall, it was far smoother than I thought it was going to be.
That's good to hear.
So
yeah,
I think I did, like I have the 8 projects with all that shared code. And the first one probably took 3 or 4 days to kind of get it figured out how to do it, understand Git, move to the new things. And then The next ones I did all like maybe 3 hours each or something like that. So
Oh, wow.
basically it took maybe a week to fully convert and test the project mode, all 8 projects, and then it was good.
Well, that's wonderful then. That's nothing.
Cannon, did you notice any significant difference in size of going from the binary to project mode? You know, this, you know, like I'm sure that your structure file is, you know, 100 meg or more, you know, and resources and everything else, maybe several hundred meg. Did you notice any difference in size when you switched to project mode into tens of thousands of files as opposed to a few hundred files, maybe?
Right. You know what? I didn't even check. I don't know. That's a great question. I will tell you something I did notice. There's a couple of bugs that I've reported, and one of them's supposed to be fixed in R5, although I haven't tested it yet. And the other one, they said probably will be like R7 or 8 or something. It's a infrastructure change. But if you're just working on a small project, you're not going to ever experience this. But when you get into the bigger ones, like I'm working with now, every time 4D goes to the background, like let's say here's a workflow I have a lot of times. I'll have a Markdown document with some documentation. Maybe it's a list of keys for an object that I'm working with. And then I have my code over here. And I don't want to make a mistake with typing. So I would go over, double click to copy, go back over here, paste, double click, copy, paste, right? You guys probably do similar things. You're going back and forth. The problem is that with a large project, every time I leave, when I come back, it's reloading everything in the background, and that can take 2 to 3 to 4 seconds. And so I get the spinning wheel, and I literally can't do anything. I wait 2, 3, 4 seconds, and then I can go ahead. And then I go back and do the same thing over again. Or if I do a search, like a global search in the development environment, the first search, I don't remember the exact numbers out in front of me, but in binary mode, maybe it was like 7 seconds for every search. And in project mode, the first search will take like 30 or 45 seconds. And then subsequent searches are down to that, say 5 or 7 seconds or whatever. Until you go to another application and come back, and then you're back up to that 30 to 45 seconds again. Same thing with compiling. If the first time you check your syntax, it'll take much, much longer than usual. And then if you check your syntax again, it'll be just as fast as in binary mode or very close to it. But as soon as you leave 4D and come back, say you check your email or whatever, I often do that while I'm compiling. I go check something and come back. Anyway, there's some indexing they need to do or something needs to be done. If you're on a large project, you will notice that delay each time 4D comes to the foreground. So
that's doing find and design. The search you're talking about is you doing find and design?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
But it's still worth it for me, even with the few little things like that. And they're working it out, right? It's new territory for them. So, for example, both operating systems have commands that are available to the 4D guys to know instantly if any files have changed and what files have changed, right? They don't need to scan the whole system every single time it comes to the forefront. So I'm hoping that they'll do a few things to make it easier for us.
Yeah, it's surprising that, you know, if you know, I imagine they have some large projects that they work with at 4D with 4D, so it would be a surprise if it was a surprise to them, right? So, you know, we'll see. Let's hope they get that ironed out. But thanks, Cannon. Barring any other questions, if anybody can go ahead and blurt out, I'm gonna share my screen again, and I really appreciate the sharing the great code that you put together, and really useful features, useful stuff.
Hey, Brent, before we wrap things up, I wanted to tell everybody that if you are using the 4D Info Reporter component, there is a new version out in the last couple of days. I found a bug where you could not save your SVG images. And Thomas Schlumberger has updated that for us, thankfully.
Do you guys all use that the info reporter? Maybe, you know, do the
You should be using Info Reporter if you're running a server.
Only when necessary. Like I start having problems, I'll turn it on, but I don't leave it running constantly.
Yeah.
The advice that 4D has given me is it's cheap insurance, because when the problem occurs, your logs are already there and it's very little overhead.
Yeah, no, it's a nice tool to you know, so long as it doesn't interfere with anything else you're doing, which it shouldn't. It's great for monitoring your servers and keeping a history of performance and memory and whatnot. But yeah, so thanks again. Our schedule can be found on the website, 4dmethod.com schedule. We have another meeting January 20th, which is still open for people giving a demo. So if you have something fun to show or just want to show your own application, go for it. Let me know and we'll get you on the schedule. Any other questions or discussion is always appreciated. Feedback, compliments, suggestions, anything. And you can also help to participate and support the group via Patreon. Check it out. There's some interesting things to rewards for support. Anyways, thanks again to 4D for helping to participate in these meetings. Milan, we see you there. And Jim, Cannon, thanks again for the great demo and sharing the code. I'm excited to take a look at it and start working with especially this quick search. You know, like I said, I spot like silly. I seldom use mouse for opening things. So yeah, anyways, we'll see you guys all next time.
Thanks, Brent. Thanks, Cannon.
All right, bye now.